Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Two Guys Talking Sports. We are presented by First Citizens Bank. If you got any banking needs that you need here locally in the town or city of Dillon, county of Dillon, go by and see them. Personal banking, any kind of car loans, home loans, any kind of banking needs that you need, go see First Citizens Bank. All right, let's jump into it. Let's recap Week 7.
Getting in the thick of things. We got some good games coming up.
Season's wrapping up. We're in those region games where, it was the games that we talked about. Obviously, you want to win as many as you can, but these are the games that matter the most. Yep. The most important game of the year for DCS all year, up to this point, was this game against Kings being their first region game, and they made a statement.
And going in, this is a game on paper they should have won. And, we weren't there, but from all sides of the ball, they pretty much dominated the entire game.
They did 55-14, huge win for the Warriors. Avery Sherman had a huge game, 365 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, and a rushing touchdown.
Somebody did want me to ask you, did you ever throw for that many yards in a DCS game?
Yeah. I remember one time against Burns, I threw 5 touchdowns before the half, and then Kelly didn't let me play anymore.
Yeah.
So,
Dang.
It happens.
That's the fall. We never played past half.
Yeah.
Okay.
Avery Sherman, though, huge game for him. Jackson Adler, 5 catches for 235 yards receiving. Seems like they must have just been.
Apparently, he had another touchdown that was called back for a penalty, but I think he ended up scoring again anyway.
4 touchdowns for him and a rushing touchdown. Reese Bracey, 6 total tackles, 2 sacks, and a forced fumble, and 2 fumble recoveries. I mean, they were all over the field.
The Bracey,
offensively, defensively.
The Bracey kids are. I'm trying to think of the right word to use. They're like the honey badger, where they're everywhere.
Ain't gonna give up, just all over the place. And then Wyatt Locklear, he also had 7 tackles and a fumble recovery. So a great game for the Warriors. Like I said, they've been kind of building to this, where they were moving the ball, they were putting up the yards, they just weren't getting into the red zone.
Yep.
And they've continued to do what they do. I think, shout out to the offense coordinator, Landry Collins. I saw some stuff on Facebook where people they must have changed some stuff up this week. That's why we were finally scoring. They didn't change anything up.
No.
They kept doing what they were doing. They followed the game plan that they were, been following all year.
Yeah.
And it just it clicked when it's supposed to click, and when it needed to click, they did what they were supposed to do.
And the good thing about last week is they were playing a team that they knew they should beat.
Right.
Previous weeks, you maybe can't say that.
Right.
So maybe it just gives them some extra confidence and know, hey, we can do this.
Right.
Just going out there and executing it. And, I mean, they executed on all sides of the ball.
Yeah.
So maybe, like I said, it gives them some added confidence going into the Lee Academy game, because I know when they played Lee Academy last time, they give them a lot of points.
And they got down big early against Lee, and then they just couldn't claw back. Now you're coming off a big game where you finally, broke free. You finally did the things, that you needed to do to get into the end zone. You're going to come back and face somebody you've already faced. You have that confidence, and it's going to be a home game for you.
Is it?
Yeah, homecoming.
Okay.
So big game. There's should be a lot of people there with homecoming.
It is at home.
You've played them before. You're coming off your biggest game of the year.
Yep.
Riding a lot of confidence. So looking for a big game. From the Warriors.
Are you going to be making an appearance for your first game of the
year? I
year?
got family coming in this weekend.
Oh, it's always something.
Yeah,
always something.
It is. Dillon took on their what has became here recently a little bit of a rivalry in Aynor, but it wasn't this week. 42-16.
I think there's like a 2-year stretch where it was like there were close games between them and Aynor, but
ever since then, it's kind of been like that. Ever since that one loss that Dillon took to Aynor, it's almost been like anytime that somebody beats Dillon, then it becomes like a little rivalry.
It's very rare when Dillon loses in region play. Like, knock on wood.
Dillon, 291 yards of total offense. Josiah Oxen, 9, 10 of 16, 126 yards. Continues to just do what is needed of him.
But they need the one thing that worries me about Dillon, and you saw this in the Hartsville game, is they have to use him effectively, because you can't just run the ball all season. And then when you get, especially crunch time, when you're getting these tough region games, get in the playoffs and the run's not as effective, then you're trying to use a quarterback that you haven't used like that all season long. And that's what happened in the Hartsville game. Like, you can't get upset at a player, regardless of how good you think he is or how good he thinks himself is. But if you don't use them like that all season, and then you expect them to be like that, I feel like it's a rude awakening.
You have
sometimes.
to, even when you run the ball well, you have to throw it some throughout the game, because, like you said, if you're running the ball well and it's a close game, and then all of a sudden they figure out how to stop your run, and then you have to turn to your quarterback in the third, fourth quarter and say, "Hey, now we got to throw." Well, he has no rhythm to the game at that point.
And you're calling play calls you haven't called all game, so I think you should have a happy balance where you need to keep him,
It doesn't necessarily have to be 50-50 run pass, but you got to sprinkle in that pass. And I think they did well with that this week. 16 passes, that's a good number.
Yeah.
That's a good number for where you want to be. If you're a team that wants to run the ball a lot, 16 passes is good, completing 10 of them.
Yeah.
Throwing a touchdown, that's a solid game for him in the offense that Dylan wants to run.
Agree.
Jamarian
Fling he's good, man.
4 touchdowns for him, 118 yards. The concerning thing for me, not a huge concern, but Dylan gave up 230 yards on the ground.
Yeah.
That's something they definitely got to clean up this week, because they've got a tough game, coming up.
But they also didn't give up many yards through the air.
Right,
So, I guess it's always tough if you're playing a team that is just like a Latta or a Lakeview.
Right.
I just don't think you're not going to be able to stop them the whole game. Like, they're going to have those bursts of plays where they're going to put up those numbers. Because I don't believe the defense, they didn't allow many yards passing.
No.
And Aner may not be a team that passes the ball a lot.
239 yards, 230 on the ground. So,
Yeah.
not much through the air. You just don't want to run into one of those teams that can run and pass, and you're giving up 230 yards on the ground, kind of like Hartsville.
Yeah. Hartsville didn't pass the ball that much that game.
Right. But Dylan, good win for them. I think they take on Manning this week.
It's a good game. We got some big games
another big
this
game,
week.
yeah. Latta took on Hannah Pamplico. Latta coming off a loss, a tough loss. That they kind of wanted to get back to what they do. Seems like they did. 33-0, picking up that win.
I think they utilized their passing game a lot. There was no. I didn't when I
not many
when I
stats
was
available.
when I was looking it up. And usually Coach Eisman's pretty good, but
Right.
I just think when I was looking up everything, it hadn't been inputted yet. But I know watching some of the highlights, they did have a touchdown pass to their tight end, which you don't see that often.
And I think for Latta, that's something that I've kind of wanted to see, is because we know they can run the ball.
Yeah.
But when you get into those games where the run is not as effective, you got to be able to, like we just said about Dylan, you got to be able to throw it. So
and they've got an athletic quarterback.
yeah,
LeBron.
I think that they know that, once we get into these tougher region games and get into the playoffs, we're going to have to throw some. So, getting that work in now, especially coming in, because it's going to be tough to run the ball against Lakeview this week.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to be able to pass some. You're going to have to be able to, mix in some throws to be able to keep the run game consistent.
Yeah.
So I think, throwing in some passing plays this week, especially against a team you should beat, that was an effective game plan.
And when Latta passes, they're usually pretty effective with their passing game.
So big win for Latta, 33-0, and they will take on Lakeview, who's coming off a bye this week. So that's a huge game. Within the region that they play in, and also just
Locally.
within the county.
Yeah, Dillon
within
County.
the county.
I expect there to be a lot of people there Friday night.
Yeah, that'll be a huge.
I wish
one.
I was going to be there.
Marion continues to do what they do, 34-0 against Kingstree. No surprise here; they continue to roll.
Yeah.
I don't foresee Marion having any losses, to finish out the year.
It's tough to
and then a
stop.
quick shout out,
With Sheet Scott.
getting an offer from South Carolina. So I think that was his 20th offer. I think is what he posted.
They're deeming it flipping season. So he's committed to Kentucky.
Right.
But you never know what
When
to
that
expect.
hometown team offers you.
Because South Carolina
sometimes
did
it's
that
hard.
with another player who's committed to Tennessee. I think he's at Fort Dorchester. I think last name is Bray's, the receiver.
Yeah.
So it's getting in. It's kind of like what South Carolina, I hate to go to college route,
Right.
but it's kind of like what South Carolina did with Lenore Sellers last year,
Yep.
where they weren't real sure on them.
Yep.
Saw them in camp, seen what they've done
Right.
this season. So
Same thing for Quashid. I mean,
Definitely want him to do what makes him happy, but I'd
Yeah.
love to see him in Garnet Black.
I would
next year.
too. So big win for Marion. PD took on Wilson Hall, and it continues to just be a tough year for PD. 52-14 loss, and they followed a 2-5 on the season.
I think I've kind of like I think that there's just a thought in my head. Like I haven't really followed Skeeza ball
Right.
I have this year. But I feel like when PD moved up to 3A last year, they just had the perfect storm. They did. They had a lot of senior leadership that were great athletes. Yep. And when you lose all that and you face maybe overmatched in the majority of your games, I just think it's caught up to them.
It has. But the one thing I'll say about PD is they'll be back for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
They have the coaching staff that has been there, and that coaching staff, they follow them from 5th grade to the time they graduate, and they've got them in their system. Like I said, they're just young right now. But those young guys are gaining a lot of experience through these tough losses.
Yeah, and I mean, and like I said, 3A and Skeeza is like the cream of the crop.
Right.
You're playing some schools that may have avenues that some smaller schools like a PD, even though they are 3A, PD's a small school.
Yeah.
They may not have the same stuff that these bigger schools have, like in terms of maybe getting certain players to come to their schools and whatnot.
Another thing that kind of hurts PD sometimes is some of their best athletes are baseball players who just play baseball, who would help them out a lot in football, and it's kind of hard to get some of those guys out there. I know they've dealt with that some in the past, but and also just the fact that even the guys that do play baseball for PD and play football, they're so good in baseball that they spend most of the spring doing baseball where they're not getting those football workouts
you
in.
say summertime.
Yeah, and so then they're playing catch up a little bit in the summer and then beginning of fall. So, but really and truly this year for PD, it's just they're very young.
Yeah, it's a growing pain year.
Yeah,
I mean, like I said, you didn't get to where you were last year by accident.
Yeah, for sure.
But when you lose that much production, it's always tough to replace. I don't care who you are.
Right, exactly.
So it's definitely a growing pain year. It's growing year.
They'll be fine and they'll be back next year for sure. Mullins still kind of being a tough year for them. 53-26, but Mullins putting up 26 points against a very good Andrews team.
Yeah.
Mullins is kind of like DCS has been, where they're showing a little bit of promise. They just haven't been able to put the points on the board, and even though they weren't able to stop Andrews, they were able to put 26 points up, and that's promising coming into the game that they played this week.
One thing that I've kind of seen from Mullins this year, and even the game I went to, at the beginning of the year when they played Lakeview, when they played Lee Central a couple weeks ago, it's almost like it's a tale of two halves.
Right.
Where like they keep it close, they don't play bad,
right,
not necessarily good in the first half, but then something just happens in the second half and it just gets away from them.
Right.
It's what happened at Lakeview. It's what happened against Lee Central. It seems to be that's a theme for Mullins and the Auctioneers this season so far.
But them putting up the points, and technically they were supposed to have a bye week this week, but it's going to be that makeup game from Green Sea
from Labor Day weekend.
Yeah, that we picked Mullins to win that game back then. I think they're a better football team now than they were, obviously, at the beginning of the year. This could be the week for Mullins to get that victory that they've been searching for.
Find out later in the show.
You will. So that kind of wraps up our recap. We'll go into our Week 8 preview. Preview sponsored by Dillon Tire. Oil changes, tires. I know I had a golf cart tire blowout this past week. Took it up there. No, well, it's still just getting the first one fixed. I had one, took it up there. Josh got me a tire within a week. It's already on there riding around. So, car wash. They do great detail work. Anything you need car-wise or golf cart-wise. Four-wheelers. I've seen them fix four-wheelers and stuff before, too. So
it's buying local.
Yep. Go see Josh and the guys at Dillon Tire. All right, let's jump into it. Dillon is going to take on Manning, and it's
tough, man.
Big game here. Manning's coming off a win over Georgetown, who was 0-7, 40-13, and Marion only beat Aynor 28-24.
That's one of the reasons why. I was always going to take Dillon,
right?
But it is away.
Yep.
But it's always tough to like compare teams when they playing against other teams.
Right. Sometimes you just have a bad game.
Yeah. But I think it's going to be a close game.
Yeah.
but I think Dillon wins.
Yeah, I'm going to take Dillon as well. I do think that this one might be one that comes into middle of the third quarter, early fourth quarter before Dillon breaks away from him.
Dillon's got to establish the run game early.
You're definitely going to get Manning's best shot, and it's an away game.
Yep.
So, yeah, Dillon has got to do. They got to jump out and be effective early, and they're going to have to pass the ball this week. So they're going to have to call effective passes. They're going to have to dial it up at the right time.
Yep.
But I think that they learned a lot from that Hartsville game, where it was a team that was kind of evenly matched or a little bit better than maybe they were. And Dillon's rolled on since then. So, I'm picking Dillon in this one.
After this week, it kind of gets a little bit easier. They got Walcom next week and then at Georgetown.
Yeah. So this will be like their last true. Yeah. So I'm taking Dillon on this one again. I do think it'll be a close game, at least for a while.
And it is a big deal because you got playoff implications in terms of home field advantage. And Dillon's a tough place to play in. Don't know too much about Manning, but you want to try your best to get that home field advantage for playoff time.
I agree. DCS is taking on Lee Academy. Lee Academy 5-2. This is a rematch. DCS did take on Lee Academy earlier in the year, lost 35-7. Like I said, they kind of gifted them a lot of points early on in that game.
Like they gifted them like 3 touchdowns, I believe.
And DCS coming off a big victory against Kings. This is that final region game to try and punch themselves a ticket to the playoffs. I think that they still probably could get in with a 1-1 region record, but. Obviously, 2-0 doesn't hurt.
There's only 3 teams in the region,
right?
So, and they beat the other team last week.
Yeah, and homecoming this week. It's at home for DCS.
Yep.
I'm going to pick with my heart this week.
Wow.
I'm going to pick DCS coming off a huge victory. I think that they're going to play a clean game and they're going to beat Lee Academy by 1 point.
Wow. I think I've rubbed off on you.
Yeah.
You've rubbed off on me because I'm not going with my heart this week.
You're going with your head.
I'm going with my head.
It's homecoming. They're coming off a big week. They finally have been doing the things that they need to do. I'm picking with my heart. It might go against me, but I'm going with my heart this week.
Well, guess what? Like I said, I'm picking with my head, but I'm picking DCS to win.
Head and heart, and they're picking DCS. Marion is going to take on Lee Central. Lee Central's 4-2. They're coming off a bye. They're coming off 2-game win streak. I'm still taking Marion.
Yeah. Watching, I think we didn't get to see this because it was at Lee Central, but when Latta played Lee Central this year, Latta just had their way running the ball, and I think with Quashid Scott, with Gabriel Cusack, they've just got too much power running the ball.
Yeah.
And I think. May not win easy or it may not be pretty, but Marion wins on the strength of their ground game.
I agree. PD is taking on Hilton Head Christian, who is 5-2. They've got a 5-game winning streak.
Bro, they travel.
It's at Hilton, and that's the bad thing about when PD did jump up to 3A is most of these 3A teams are dispersed throughout the state.
They're in the big cities.
A lot of teams in Charleston and Hilton Head and in Columbia's and stuff like that.
Where's Wilson Hall? Is that Sumter?
Yeah, I believe so. So they're going to travel back to Hilton Head this week. I don't think it's getting any easier for PD. I'm going to pick Hilton Head this week.
Yeah, I'm going with Hilton Head as well.
And then Mullins, supposed to be a bye week. Again, this is a makeup game from that Labor Day weekend game where they had all the rain. Green Sea Floyd's 1-6 on the year. They're coming off a 34-0 loss against Lamar. I'm picking Mullins this week.
Yeah, I think this is the first game you can say for Mullins all year where they are evenly matched.
They're evenly matched. Yeah.
It's at home. Maybe they got a little bit of added motivation. Yep. Yeah, I'm taking Mullins this week. I'm picking the Auctioneers to get their first win of the season.
I agree. I think that
I hope that happens.
They put up enough points against a very good Andrews team that they've built a little bit of confidence in that they can do it.
Yeah.
I think at home it's just a perfect storm for Mullins to finally get that first victory. And then our game of the week is sponsored by, funny enough, the city of Dillon. Golf course is back. Golf course is back open. It's still, the weather's a little bit cooler now, so it's, you're not going to be burning up out there on the golf course.
We're in the season now where it's, we wake up, it's in the 50s.
Yep.
When you're getting off work, you're in the 80s.
Right. You got to wear a hoodie to work, and then you're sweating by the time you leave.
That's typical Dillon County winter time.
Yep. Also, the Wellness Center still open. It's perfect weather to go walk around the track, play some basketball, get a workout in. So, this game of the week is sponsored by City of Dillon, and the game of the week is Latta versus Lakeview.
Yep.
And it is at Latta. So, you know, a little bit of an advantage for Latta having that home game this week.
Yeah.
But advantage for Lakeview coming off a bye, which is sometimes not what Lakeview wants. They like, you know, to play every week. They like to stay in their routine and do the things that they, you know, want to do, run their game plan each week.
Yeah.
This is two teams that like to run the ball.
Yeah.
So it's going to be strength on strength, who can stop who, and then potentially who can win in the passing game, I believe.
Yeah.
I think that the advantage goes to Latta in the passing game.
Yeah.
But can Latta run the ball effectively enough to open up the passing game?
Yeah.
I'm picking Latta. I've been
Latta.
rolling with Latta all year.
Yeah.
I'm in a group chat with some guys that I picked Latta earlier, and so if I win against it then, I get some hell about that. So I'm going with the Vikings this week.
I'm kind of in agreements with you. Both teams love to run the ball.
Yep.
Like I said, it's going to come down to the passing game. When I saw Lakeview play Mullins, they did pass the ball.
Right.
But I think Latta has the more established passing game.
Yep.
It's tough. It's going to be a close game because this is a, you know, determine probably who wins the region.
Huge region game.
I'm very surprised Latta's not ranked in the state in the top 10. Lakeview is, I think they're 8 or 9. But I think Latta wins. It's going to be close, and I'm only saying that because it's at home. I think it's going to be a fired up crowd,
right?
You know, because they know each other.
Yep.
When I was in the stands when Latta played. I think it was Johnsonville.
Yeah.
I was talking to a friend of mine and talking about how intense the volleyball game was between Latta and Lakeview.
Right.
You're gonna have another tough matchup, intense matchup. At the end of the day, I think Latta wins.
I agree. So just to recap, Dillon is going to travel down to Manning.
Yep.
Big game.
Big game.
DCS
Big
is
game.
at home versus Lee Central.
Lee
Another
Academy.
big game.
Lee Academy.
Lee Academy. Big game for them.
Yep.
PD is going to travel down to Hilton Head. Mullins is at home versus Green Sea, looking for that first win.
Yep.
Marion's at Lee Central. And then, of course, our game of the week, Lakeview and Latta. So a little bit of traveling this week for some of the teams. Like we said before, go and get something to eat, some snacks and stuff locally. Maybe even some takeout to eat on your way there.
If you're at a home game,
visit those concession stands.
because like I said, it supports a lot of the athletic stuff they want to do.
I agree. So big week this week because the season's wrapping up. A lot of these region games is going to determine who gets into the playoffs. Maybe some seedings for teams that probably are already in. So go out, support these guys because these are the games that really, really matter.
It's crunch time now.
It is. So we look forward to seeing you guys next week. Good luck to all of our teams this week, and we'll see you then.